got to tell y'all about this thing called life. You know what got to share it. See, there's this thing called life. I got to tell y'all about this thing called life. Yeah.
Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome to episode 15 of In a Good Way podcast. My special guest today is Ricardo, who is someone that I met at Sweat, and we had some deep conversations, and I'm really excited. One of the main reasons I brought him on was because he had a ton of knowledge about, he's from El Salvador, right? Were you born there as well, or that's just?
Yeah, born in El Salvador.
Yeah, so he was born in El Salvador. He's very in touch with his roots, and throughout my whole life, I've always interacted with a lot of people from El Salvador, right? And even that, I saw the similarities, even hearing your stories about how, when you try to talk to people about the culture, and it sounded like you face the same things being from El Salvador as I face, being Mexican, right? Like, when you try to tell them, it's almost like there's some kind of stigma, like they don't understand where we come from. And it's like, well, especially when you get into the spiritual aspect, it's like, oh, es del diablo. Like when you talk, native culture and all that. So, I really do want to turn the floor over to you. I guess if you want to start, just start with like how you got, like what made you want to learn about the culture? Like, was your dad, mom, did someone already teach you when you were young, or what? Like, what gave you interest in that way?
I got on the first off, thank you, brother, for the space, and thank you for the time. Appreciate you. And I'm saying, it was a pleasure meeting you at ceremony. Okay. So yeah, man, me getting on the red road was just something that just happened. So my very, very first ceremony, so my god brother, who has a similar story to me, because like a lot, we're known as hijos de la guerra, because we were born during the Civil War. So many of us either migrated or were exiled, like was my family situation. And we all ended up in San Francisco. So that's where I was living for some time. And we were staying like in a shelter type place, you know what I mean? And we kind of met some people. So a person that I became very close with, my god brother, he ended up marrying a woman from Yucatan. And if you know anything about the history of Yucatan, they're predominantly Mayan. So the very, very first ceremony that I ever participated in was my godson's baptism, which was a traditional Mayan baptism. Wow. So then this stretches back like now a couple of years. So that was my very first ceremony. That's kind of how I got connected. And then I ended up getting connected in El Centro Cultural de Techanti, which is in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. Oh, wow. So I actually went to a Nahuatl class there. And I met Cuscatlan, who was the Tamashtiani at the time, teaching Nahuatl Pipil, which is actually a class I just came from. I just had a class. Yeah, we're doing the classes on Mondays and Tuesdays. From 5 to 7 over there, which is from 6 to 8 over there, which is 5 to 7 over here. So I literally just got out of the class. Oh, wow. And so that's what happened. I was in the Techanti Center in MacArthur Park, and we were studying Nahuatl Pipil. So Nahuatl is something that's taught, for example, in Mexico, but Nahuatl Pipil is a specific type of dialect native of what is Cuscatlan. And Cuscatlan, what that means is a tierra de collares, or the land of necklaces. So learning some of that history, that's how I got pretty much immersed into the culture and immersed into the Red Road. From there, my Tamashtiani, so Quetzalcoatl, he took me to my very first Temazcal, my very first sweat lodge. And this was actually in Santa Paula with the Hummingbird Circle. Oh, wow. And yeah, so from there, I did my very, very first lodge. And like many people have stories about how the lodge was for them their very first time. My very first time, I literally thought I was going to die. You know what I mean? Yeah, but I got to keep it real.
Hey, same here. Same here. It's funny, just real quick, not to cut you off, but like my very first sweat happened to be on the hottest day of the year that year. So the same, like, I didn't think I was going to finish it, but by some miracle, like I ended up finishing. But yeah, I thought I was going to die too. So I feel you.
Right on, man. And yeah, that's kind of how it happened with me. So, because I didn't even plan to go to a Temazcal. What happened was I was actually greyhounding up to LA to take care of some other stuff. And I got in contact with some people, and they invited me to a Temazcal. And originally when they said the Temazcal started at 6 o'clock, I thought they were talking about 6 p.m. But in reality, it was going to start like in the morning. And I told them that I touched down in LA in the morning, and they were like, wait, so you can't go to the Temazcal? And I was like, no, yeah, I can. So I ended up going to my first Temazcal. And that's where he was kind of like preparing me. So the Temazcani was kind of explaining to our teacher. So Temazcani, that means teacher in Nahuatl. So, and that's universal, whatchamacallit. So yeah, so he was telling me about the Temazcal, and he was preparing me. And he told me, no matter what, do not exit the Temazcal. So obviously, you know what I'm saying, tough guys, you know what I'm saying, we're homeless. And I was like, nah, man, I won't ask to leave for nothing. Go to the second round, man. I'm dying. Like I said, I thought I was gonna die, man. It was off the hook. But what was beautiful about that particular ceremony was somebody raised up their hand and they actually asked to leave. And the person who was pouring that day, Don Francisco, he was talking to her, but he was talking to the entire group, and he was talking to me. He mentioned how a lot of times human beings, we do stuff out of curiosity because we were invited, but when things get tough, like in a Temazcal, when it gets hot, we leave or we exit or we break those chains. So that's one thing he challenged us, to not break the chain. And so I completed the 4 rounds. So obviously when you go into a Temazcal, it symbolizes Mother Earth's womb, and you die and you're born again. So I was literally born again when I came out of that Temazcal. So that was pretty much like the beginning of a hardcore journey into the Red Road of the lodges. And through the lodges and through Nahuatl, I eventually got connected back in Cuscatlan, back in El Salvador. And that's where I've been continuing a lot of my work. So you were mentioning, for example, about the Biblioteca Ancestral of Itzalco. So that's an ancestral library where, so for example, to put things in a context, Nahuatl is only spoken by roughly about 200, I tell people generously 300 people or less, but a lot of people estimate that only 200 people or less still speak that language. So that's why it's important. For example, that's the importance of the Biblioteca Ancestral in Izalco, because we're working with the children. Because when the elders die, what will happen with the culture? What will happen with the language? So that's where we're teaching the youngsters so that they could keep everything, you know what I'm saying, thriving and alive.
And how big is the school as of now? Like how many teachers, how many students are participating?
It's a humble school. It's roughly about maybe 30 students. But what's beautiful about it is that it has the respect of the community. So when you go to Izalco, even in Izalco or in Cuscatlan, in El Salvador, a lot of people, they have like a negative viewpoint of native culture. They don't, El Salvador is a very Catholic Christian country, very traditional in that way, which is beautiful. But unfortunately, many people in this tradition, they do look down on the native way. Or they will speak negatively of it. Like, for example, you tell somebody you're going to Izalco and somebody will say the joke, te van a mojar el calzón. Because Izalco is known for example, because some of the elders, they do what is known as limpias, or they do some of that spiritual stuff, they get categorized as brujos or brujas. When not at all, they're just elders. They're just elders that are educated in this way, and they understand, for example, how for example, burning some sage, burning some cedar, burning some lavender, this could be medicine for us. They understand the different seeds, the different fruits, the different vegetables, how they have different uses in our day-to-day. But unfortunately, as a result of that, they're categorized in that way of brujo or bruja. In fact, I had a friend once, she told me she lit some sage and some people were asking her, do you still believe in God? So that, unfortunately, is some of the reality that you deal with in El Salvador. But it's been accepted. In Izalco, it's been accepted. So the library, it's open to all the youth. All the youth can enter. And I believe that maybe all the youth of Izalco at one point or another, they have gone to that library. So the library has that respect. And it's actually a library that's ran by La Alcaldía del Común. So La Alcaldía del Común is actually something that goes back to the ancestral times in regards to how the community, the native community or los pueblos originarios, how they were organized. So La Alcaldía del Común, they're in the process of constructing una casa templo, which would serve kind of like a museum, but an autonomous museum. So owned specifically by La Alcaldía del Común. To put things in perspective, for example, Tenochtitlan and, ¿cómo se llama? There are different exhibits that you have in museums, right?
Yeah.
But they would never grab these things from the Vatican, for example. You have to travel to the Vatican to go see that ceremonial space. So how is it possible that our native sites, they're taken all over the world? You know what I mean? They're commercialized. And that's something that really shouldn't happen. And that, unfortunately, is something that happens when you deal with tourism aspects, or when you deal with people that aren't really familiar with our ways. They look at ways, I guess exploiting would be a bad way to think of it, but kind of como sacarle el jugo, you know what I'm saying? Or how to get monetary gain. Let's keep it real, right? And that's not really what we're about. We're about educating and sharing. At least that's how I've been taught Native way. We're about sharing. We don't charge. Maybe some tobacco, right? Or maybe your time, your work, you know what I mean? That's what we would ask for, but we wouldn't ask for anything monetary. So that's something about Native community, that autonomy, to keep it within us. So that's what La Alcaldía del Común in Izalco, they're trying to do. They're trying to preserve our culture, but in an autonomous way where it belongs specifically to the people. You know what I mean?
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. And like in El Salvador as a whole, how many people have preserved like the native culture? Or is it like, I mean, is it a very, just like a small amount? Because I see like even in Mexico and here, like I remember the first time I was invited to a spring ceremony, and you know, I hadn't seen that. So I was like, whoa, I seen all these Aztec dancers, and I was just mind blown, and I was just asking questions nonstop. And one of the guys that was answering my questions, he told me how just within a few years back, there had only been like 10 grupos that, you know, danzantes, you know, and within just a few, there was like over 100 and something. And he told me how some that came from San Francisco, San Jose, from Mexico, this and that, and they were all there. And I was like, oh, wow. So I saw that it was growing, right? There was like this cultural revolution happening, that people want to get in touch with where they come from, you know? And I think it keeps progressing despite all the things that are happening, and how they keep, I mean, you would think it would probably want to push people away from it, the way they treat, like, oh, you're an immigrant and get out of the country and this and that. You would think that people would probably be afraid to speak up and say, hey, you know, I'm native, yo soy indígena, I'm from here. But or maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's having the opposite effect, right? Like instead of them being afraid, it's waking something up in them. So yeah, I mean, my question was like, yeah, in El Salvador, how do you see it? Like, is it happening? Is there starting to be a cultural revolution, or is there like still a lot of, like how you said, the Catholicism, Christianity, is that the dominant influence?
Yeah, that's the dominant, that's definitely the dominant influence. So to put things in perspective through history. So, and we were talking about this, Omar, there was a huge genocide that took place in 1932. So this was where El General Martinez, it was a complete genocide of the native population. So in El Salvador, we had different tribes. So, and if I forget a specific tribe, my apologies. But yeah, for example, in Occidente, we had Mayans, we had the Olmecas, we had Chortis, Pocomanes, and the dominant group, which is still here active now, is the Pipiles. And then in Oriente, which is where I'm from actually, so the Lencas. And the Lencas, we stretch into Nicaragua and into Honduras. So in 1932, and we also had an African population as well. There's Afro-Salvadoreño community. They were wiped out completely.
Wow.
So yeah, in a period of 3, so to put this in perspective, during the Civil War that lasted from 78 to about 92, officially, there was over 100,000 people that died in that war. But we're talking about 14 years. In a period of 3 months, I've heard anywhere from 30 to 60,000 native or African people, or people just basically that were different to what was Ladinos, you know what I'm saying, or mestizos. Anybody that identified different, what they were categorized was subversive, and they were basically murdered.
Wow.
And it was harsh because specifically males were targeted. So anybody that was male, 10 years or older, was automatically murdered because they wanted to take control of the lands as well. So as a result of this history, and the only survivors, like we were talking about, were the women. So they had to carry that burden, not only of witnessing the men and their children and the population get murdered, massacred, but they had to keep it alive. But unfortunately, there was that fear aspect. So you fast forward now to 2022, where we're at now, a lot of people were educated with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you weren't proud to be native, because if you proclaimed yourself as native, you would have been murdered because you would have been witnessed as an enemy. So that's the reality, and how it basically influences the times today. You either we were talking about this, how sos un indio, but that sos un indio, that's an insult. Or for example, you look down on it, or you're ridiculed. Or we were just talking about it in the class that I just took, the Nahuatl class, and the teacher who teaches Nahuatl, he's also a teacher in elementary school out there. And he says that in the curriculums, the youth is not taught anything beyond Spain. So Salvadoran history is actually, a lot of it is Spanish history.
Oh, wow.
So that's another factor that influences. So it all starts from school. So from schooling, the education is very minimal. And then in terms of the youth identifying, that's even less. Because like I said, there was never that sense of pride. Like one beautiful thing that happens out here in Califas, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but any cultural event that includes Latinos, you will see something native. Like there will be some danza, or somebody will light some medicine, like somebody will light some copal, but that will be included in the ceremony, be it like a Cinco de Mayo parade or any type of event that represents raza, it'll have something native. But back in Cuscatlan, back in El Salvador, that's pretty much non-existent.
Oh,
it's
wow.
only specifically, it's only specifically at the sites. Some of the places that are still, for example, trying to preserve, well, not trying, they're actually preserving the culture, but it's minimal. For example, in the areas of Izalco, in the areas of Nahuizalco, the strong of Nahuatl Hablante community there in Santo Domingo de Guzman. You have some events, for example, in Panchimalco, and in Oriente, which is where I'm from, you do have some, for example, lencas, the cacauperas, or in Quelepa, you have some ceremonies, but like I said, it's very clandestine. It's something very, very, so a lot of lencas, I've heard these stories in Honduras. The lencas are strong in Honduras. The lencas, unfortunately, they're isolated into the mountains. And oftentimes they won't come into the mainland for fear of being ridiculed, or fear of being even assaulted. So that's, I mean, when you're living with that type of fear, when you're living with that type of persecution, when you're living with honestly, that threat, it's very hard to take native pride. You know what I mean? So that's something that's beautiful that we can see here in Califas, but unfortunately we don't see it really over there back in El Salvador. So that's part of the reality over there.
Yeah, I mean, but even though we still see it, and you're right about that, yeah, they do always include it. You know, even on the TV channel, you know, Telemundo and all that stuff, which, you know, people have always criticized. Like I remember growing up, like you even see it, right? Like all the reporteros, everybody were always lighter skin and this and that. Now they've included more diversity, right? But even though they would always include, you know, Aztecs into the, like the danzantes and all that into the celebration, people still don't realize where we come from. that's what's mind-blowing to me, you know. And not only our people, but even natives from here, from the north, you know, like, you know, when I went to Standing Rock, you know, and it was like one of the most beautiful experiences. Like I was able, you know what Standing Rock was, right? Like, yeah. And so, you know, even natives from there were kind of like, wow, you guys are native. And I was like, and then they were even, you know, right there on the front line, like, you know, danzantes right there, you know, having ceremony, you know, in support and everything. So like seeing that, and that's where we come from, but still not correlating the two, that's who we are, you know, that's where we come from. And so, you know, I've ran into, you know, I think that's been one of the most hurtful things that I've experienced, is like when, you know, my own people will be trying to, you know, to convert me, right? Like, you know, accept Jesus and all that. And it's fine. Like, I don't care what they do, but once they cry, or like they know, like that's the path I follow, you know, like, you know, the core, and I still got a lot to learn. Like I know I'm barely scratching the surface, you know. I wish I could be more immersed, which, you know, I'm sure I'll find a way to be as time progresses, but them knowing that and still wanting to try to convert me. And I told you, like, one of the things, you know, I had a friend who was Salvadorian, and, you know, she was probably one of the longest kind of friendships I had, right? I spoke with her like consistently over the course of like 10 years. And when we finally stopped talking, it was because over the religion.
Yeah.
You know, she was, I mentioned stuff about, you know, going probably to ceremony, this and that. And she came at me with like, you know, kind of like the devil thing. And you know, but over time I had kind of experienced that with her. And that day I just exploded on her. And I think I went like on a 10-minute rant. And I told her that I was like, hey, like you're Salvadorian. Like you guys were in the heart of the Mayan civilization. How do you not know where your people come from? Like, I don't, like, you're calling this the devil, but like I was like, this was before they even came over here. How do you not like get that's, you know, so to say like this is the right way, like, oh, Christianity is the right way, and stick your nose up at me.
Yeah.
But yet it was like, you know, we experienced that. I had made a video about it. I don't think, well, I haven't uploaded it yet, right? But you know, we met like at the ceremony. There was like a white guy there, and how he comes up to us, and it was amazing because it was sad how he saw it, but like a lot of our people don't see it, right? And he was like, oh, you know, forget my Adam and Eve. That's only like 6,000 years old, and this church is over 15,000 years old, and you guys have all the knowledge. And it was crazy. It was like how eager he was to learn. Like he was very open. It was like, you know, I don't know. I saw him like with a more open heart and open eyes than even a lot of, like, you know, our people that's where we come from, and then still don't see that. You know what I mean? So I thought that was like amazing to, you know, to see that and experience that. So
yeah, but it's funny that you bring up your experience, because right now that we're talking about it, I actually did the same thing to somebody. So for example, I had an ex-girlfriend that the reason that we broke up is she invited me to her church. She's hardcore, you know what I'm saying, Christian. And I said, no, I won't go, you know what I mean? So we do it. And I remember one time I checked somebody in a community lodge. So, and then I was at fault. And then that's one of the things so what happened was there was a couple that really is in tune with Native Way, but they were singing Christian songs in the lodge. And I don't know, I was getting visions of, you know what I'm saying, my ancestors being murdered through colonization, etc. So, you know how in between rounds, when you're given the opportunity to speak, I asked the individual who's pouring if, you know what I mean, if we can, out of respect, not include these songs, because obviously if we were to go to a church, they wouldn't allow us to bring our native songs, right? Our native drums, no. But then I remember, obviously at the time I was angry, I was consumed in my ego, but I remember that the person that was pouring, they said, trust me, I understand where you're coming from, brother. But remember, in the lodge, we learn about compassion. We learn about tolerance. We learn about respect. And to take it even further, I had a Tamastiani, respect to Samuel Martinez, who taught me fe sin fronteras. You know what I'm saying? And that's why in his lodge, he would allow any song, be it a Hindu chant, a Muslim song, Jewish, anything. Because how are you going to correct somebody how to pray? Or how are you going to tell somebody, you know what I mean? We can't be colonizers like they colonized us. But like I said, at the time, and I was a lot younger, a lot more in my ego. Not to say that I don't have ego no more, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I was deep in it. And that's why I was angry. I was actually angry. We came out of that lodge, and then one of the elders, she pulled me aside, and she was trying to let me know that it was my ego. And I was like, nah, that's why we are the way we are, you know what I mean? And it's because we're always bowing down to them, but not. And that's where I learned that the key to it is to build, you know what I mean? And that respect. And unfortunately, that's what happens. Religions, like they say, religions have caused a lot of wars. You know what I mean? It's that. So that's where we have to understand that if we're believing in a God, creator, whatever we're believing in, he's about love. So we have to have love for, you know what I'm saying, everybody and what they believe in, and they do their thing. But that's the big issue, the tolerance, you know what I'm saying? Like at that time, I was very intolerant. And now I've learned, like now, if my ex-girlfriend, if she were to invite me to the church, I'd go. Yeah. And I'd go and I'd even sing the songs. I've actually, since that time, I've been back in the church, you know what I mean, a lot. And I would sing the songs, I'll say amen, I'll say the prayers. Our Father is a very beautiful prayer, right? Padre Nuestro. So I'll show that respect, but I'm native. Yo soy de los pueblos originarios. That's how I identify. And I'm like you, brother, you know what I'm saying? If somebody tries to convert me, I'll respectfully let them know, no, I'm in my, and trust me, they tried to convert me a lot. So I know exactly what you're going through, bro. But yeah, I respectfully decline and let them know, no, I'm in my tradition. And I actually, as a firekeeper, you and I were both firekeepers. So you know what I'm saying? We're deep in our way. We're deep in our tradition. And that's the path that we follow, the red road. So That's how it goes.
Yeah. No, and see, like me, what got me into the whole spiritual. I mean, I probably talked about it on other podcasts, but I never shared that with you, right? Like a lot of spiritual things started happening to me, right? So it was already like unexplainable things. And so since I didn't know anyone, any native people or anyone like that, I went to the church. Like that was the way I was like, okay, surely this is where I'll get in touch with God or whoever's trying to talk to me or all these things that are happening. And but then something happened at the church that I don't know, I wasn't feeling it. But one of the preachers said, well, don't take my word for it. You read the Bible yourself. I was like, okay. And so when I was reading all these stories, I started seeing, oh, wow, this guy, stuff that was happening to me happened to this guy and this guy and this guy. So when I read it, and when you finish reading it, you see that it has no mention of the religions, nothing. It was just stories. It's like, there's this really good book. I would compare it to like the Native Bible. It was like, you know who Vine Deloria Jr. is?
No.
Oh, he's a great Native author. I forgot. I think he was from South Dakota originally, but he wrote a lot of books, ton of books. But one of the books, it was like the way we used to live, or I don't know. I can't remember. I'll send you a picture of it so you could check it out. They don't publish it anymore, but I found it in a library. So I found it, I read it, and it's just all these stories, all like for example, they even have one where I guess different medicine men would get together and they would have a chance to show off like, their gifts. And so, for example, they talked about how like there was one where like, they would plant like, a medicine man, he planted corn and it grew within like 2 hours to full, corn would, it takes weeks or, I'm not sure exactly how long, but I know it takes weeks at least, right? Like, yeah. So he grew it right there in front of everybody. And there happened to be, I guess he was an Englishman or, Spaniard, something. I think up here it was, an Englishman, right? And he even wrote it. Like he saw it. So he attested, yeah, I seen it happen. Surely he was using witchcraft and all that. So that's what they would always say, right? But, there's all these stories of, all the native people that have visions and this from Black Elk. I don't know if you know who Black Elk is, like Black Elk City.
Yes.
Yeah, so that book, it had little excerpts of all these stories. So it's kind of like, it reminded me of the Bible, like, but the Bible wasn't for us. It was like from the lands overseas and everything. But that's how I read it. And for me, it brought me comfort when it was like, oh, I didn't have no one else to talk to about. Because I noticed even at church, if I would have told them, hey, this happened to me, like this guy in the Bible and this, they would have been like, you're crazy, And so I was like tiptoeing around church for years and years. I never really felt at home. And finally in college, I met a professor that was native. She invited me like around there. Then I met someone that invited me to my first sweat. Then I started going to sweat at her ranch and then I felt at home. You know what I mean? But I really didn't feel at home around the church thing. Like, but the book was for me, it helped me. Like it helped me because that's how I looked at it, as stories. It's just stories and these spiritual experiences that I couldn't talk, even at church, as how it's supposed to be this place of spirituality. There weren't people that believed these stories. Like that's what blew my mind, is like, you're reading it and it's supposed to be how they say, your Bible. Like, when something's your Bible, that means that's your like instruction manual. But yeah, you don't even believe these spiritual things. And around the native community, boom, they're open to it. Even if they don't know what you went through, they listen, like they believe you. Like, yeah, if you say, hey, I had a vision of this, I had a vision of that, or, I saw a spirit talk to me or something, they're like, oh, okay. Like, what do you think it meant? Like, it's cool. They're open. And, and that's what another, obviously like colonization, because even in the 80s, I think, or in the late 70s or 80s, they were still putting medicine men up here in nut houses, right? When they would practice their ways, they would say, oh, they're crazy. And it wasn't until, I guess the 80s that they stopped doing that. So it's a sad history of people not wanting to share their spiritual experiences because of that. And I don't know, I just think about how many people got, on psychiatric medicine and this and that, being around religions, because in the religion, you know, or they would have told them like, oh, you need an exorcism, and probably cause more damage than, you know, I don't know what if they were really like, you know, I believe in different things, so I don't know, but maybe they cause more damage when, if they were around a native community, they would have probably helped them better, you know, like more that are aware of the whole, you know, it's almost like a lot of people in native communities will walk like, it's almost like you're walking with one foot in the spirit world, one foot in this world. You know what I mean? It's not separate. It's really like they understand how it intertwines. You know what I mean? So yeah, when I finally found it, I was like, okay, I'm not crazy, this and that, and I felt great, and so that was kind of my little journey. I don't know why I brought all that up, but yeah,
beautiful, man. Thank you.
yeah. Oh, about the religion, yeah, that's why. So that's why I've never, like, I have no problem stepping into, and the same. I actually had, not the girl I was talking to that we fought over the Christian. I had another, like a Salvadorian girlfriend, and she would, oh, let's go to church, like, and I would go with her, you know. And I was like, so it's funny, like I've seen, like, for Salvadorians, it's a huge thing, like the Christianity, right? Like, so
yeah. It's because we're people with a lot of faith, and that's something that could be traced back to all the hardships that we've gone through. So many of us, we had to endure the Civil War. You know what I mean? Well, you know what I'm saying? Sorry, yeah, a little hesitation because, like, real personal. But for example, my father, he was sequestered and he was tortured. And when he was in Mariona, you know what I'm saying, the prison out there, he wasn't praying to Mateo. He wasn't praying to Creator like we know, the Great Spirit. He was praying to Jesus Christ. So I say it every day, you know what I'm saying? I owe Jesus Christ my life for keeping my father alive, you know what I'm saying? We have El Santo Romero, Monsignor Romero, who recently was elevated to sainthood. I actually had the privilege to go there. And what's funny is that how pagan I am, you know what I'm saying? I'm in the Vatican, a sacred place. And if you go into the Vatican, there's a statue of an eagle. So the entire time that this ceremony is taking place, I'm praying to the eagle. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, but yeah, no, we're people with a lot of faith. And that's how we've been educated, you know what I mean? Through Christianity, through Catholicism. The main thing, and this is what our struggle is back in Cuscatlan, in El Salvador, is to teach that tolerance, or to teach at the very least that respect. Because I mean, everybody, when you look in the mirror, if you're from El Salvador, especially now in 2022, there is, I would challenge anybody that would claim to be criollo, you know what I'm saying? Meaning 100% Spanish. I would challenge anybody from El Salvador, because I don't believe that can exist anymore. Just like nobody's 100% native anymore. You know what I'm saying? Through the mixed race, through the years, you know what I'm saying? We have a mixture. So that's what it's about. You know what I'm saying? Respect for where we come from, respect for what other people practice. You know what I'm saying? Like, this next person could be an evangelist. This next person could be a Jehovah's Witness. This next person could be a charismatic. But then on this side, we have a medicine man, or we have a medicine woman, or we have, for example, a native person. And that's what it's about. It's about respect. And unfortunately, that's something that we're still fighting every day. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get that respect for our native ways, for our native traditions. But with time, you know what I mean? That's why, thank you so much for giving me the space to share that reality, because hopefully, you know what I'm saying, this will drop a seed in somebody else, you know what I'm saying, to identify as native, or to join the Red Road, or to join our movements, you know what I'm saying? Rescate Ancestral, that's actually part of the movement of what we're doing in El Salvador, which means a rescuing or a preservation of their ancestral ways, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and is there a website as well? That way I'll put it in the description and everything, or they don't have a website or anything for...
There's not really a website, you know what I'm saying, because our ways are, you know what I'm saying, traditionally it's oral. But I mean, just have anybody that's interested get in contact with you, fam, and then just get in contact with me directly, and then I could connect you with the right people. Because there's a lot of people in Southern California involved in the movement, you know what I'm saying?
Do you have like...
Okay.
Do you have Instagram or anything, or...
Nothing, man. I'm off of social media.
No, that's good. That's how, I mean, I tried a lot of times, you know, I would delete and you know, but yeah, no, and just to go back, like what you were saying is like, see, for some reason, something worked out in me where I was very, it's like that, like how you said, how you would say, you know, you owe Jesus Christ, you know, your life because your dad.
Right.
The same. It's like, that's who, you know, I had a different understanding. Like for me, when I read the Bible again, like I read it, the first time I read it, I took like the whole summer, right? I got it, and I got a dictionary because there was a ton of words I didn't understand. So every word I wasn't understanding, I would write it down, look up the definition, and then okay. So, you know, it took me like 3 months to read it the first time, right? The whole summer, just like reading some of it every day, writing down every word. You know, I had a whole notebook, all these words that I didn't read, but that's why. But also, I wouldn't pray to Jesus, because even when I read the Bible, it was like, even Jesus was like, when you pray, pray our Father. So I never prayed to Jesus, because he even said, like, don't pray to Jesus. You know, he didn't say pray to me. That's why too, like, I had so many different, I was taking it more literal, right? So I was like, okay, well, Jesus saying pray our, so it was easy for me to transition from God creator to great spirit and keep it like that. That's why when I went towards like the native ways, it was easy for me to be like, okay, great spirit creator. That's why I've been praying to anyways, you know, like, but I do owe that my life. That's what changed me from being in the streets and this and that, connecting with, you know, who I thought, you know, was God. And then I started having visions of this. I thought it was God, like that God of the Bible that was appearing to me and showing me who it was really. To this day. Like, I mean, I always felt like that's who it was, but it was, like I said, it was, I saw it. So to me, it was like the great spirit, you know, so that's why I never like disrespected it. But once, so I was very open, right? Like even Buddhists and Muslims, like, you know, when I started being around Christianity, like, you know, and because all the 9/11 stuff, so people had a lot of, you know, animosity towards Muslims too. But I was always open towards everybody. But then when I started getting more into the native culture and people weren't accepting of me, slowly I started getting bitter. And, you know, I mean, I even wrote some songs where I'm like, you know, like in today's culture, like a cancel, like if I was a big, I would be like the first one people would be trying to cancel, because I said things like I didn't bite my tongue, but it was because it was like a, you know, cuando estás calentando el agua, I forgot what it's called in English. The, you know, I forgot the tea,
Boiling
you
water,
know,
boiling
yeah, when
water.
you're boiling, it just like, you know, it starts, I can't, you know, when it boils, right? And it's just making the chiflada, like the loud. That's how it was. I held it in for so many years. Just like that girl, I knew her for 10 years till I finally exploded. I was like, enough is enough. Like, that's it. And that's what happened to me. If anything, it was more hurtful. And what happens to, it's like when you say like an animal, right? Like if you corner a hurt animal, that's when it fights. It's more vicious, like a mountain lion. Like, you know, corner a injured mountain lion, that thing's gonna tear you to pieces because it's fighting, you know, to save his life. So after being cornered for so long, I just got, I felt like that. Like, you're fighting. Like, don't you realize what happened to our people? Like, yeah, I felt like this hurt. So I lashed out. I lashed out with everything, you know. I said whatever came, like whatever, you know, but then, yeah, I felt bad after. I had to go back. I had to ground myself again, because that was my intent, right? To hurt. Like, you guys hurt us in that way, you know. And now, like, for example, imagine like when they talk about how many dead bodies they found, like, of these kids in these, you know, just like in one boarding school, like, you know, maybe I don't know, it's been at least 1,000, right, in some of the Canadian schools or something like that, you know. And that's just one school. People don't realize, like, now you can't hide it. Now you want, maybe if people open their eyes, they can see why it's like hurtful to us, because they don't understand, like, a lot of these religions did that. That's what it kind of symbolizes for us, you know. Like, you know, how can, like, who's okay with rape and murder? You know, so it's just that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else. I guess where you're headed, like how you see, where you see yourself heading, like walking the red road and you know, like continuing to do work in El Salvador, like for the school and everything, like where exactly you see yourself going, or where you hope like people learn or anything really.
Yeah, no, right on, man. Yeah. Hold on, let me turn on the light real quick.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I saw it getting dark. I was
yeah,
like, oh,
brother, yeah. But yeah, so that just what Creator has planned. And Creator right now, he's actually giving me the blessing. So back in 2019, I started to really study Nahuatl. So like I said, Nahuatl is something that was taught in, it's taught in Mexico. There's still a lot of communities that speak Nahuatl out there, but Nahuatl Pipil, the specific of Cuscatlan, El Salvador, that specific dialect is the one that's dying. Like I said, maybe generously 300, a lot of people, but like I said, 200. So right now I'm studying it. So I started in 2019. I was taking the classes in La Universidad Nacional and also in La UCA, which is funny. It was a Jesuit school, but I also owe those Jesuit priests my life as well, because they held my pops down back in the day. So yeah, I was taking the classes there. But unfortunately, as you'll find, whenever you're learning a language, if you don't practice it, you lose it. So fast forward 2022, a lot of what I learned in 2019, fortunately, I learned a lot of songs. So that was the one thing that, you know what I'm saying, I learned a lot of key phrases and words. And I actually wrote songs in Nahuatl Pipil that I would share in the lodge. So now in 2022, I actually won a scholarship to take a good course. So I'm taking a course on both Mondays and Tuesdays to learn the language. And like they make you like write an essay when you go apply for a scholarship. And one of the main purposes that I'm learning the language is to share it. So everything that is learned is always shared. So for example, when I go back to El Salvador, when I go back to Izalco, which is the pueblo that I do a lot of my work in El Occidente, in the department of Sonsonate, I could teach the youth, for example, Nahuatl words, Nahuatl songs, Nahuatl phrases, and that way to allow that, you know what I'm saying, the language to never truly die. And hopefully those youth, they could take it to the next level, teach their kids, et cetera, and keep it alive through that way. You'll always see me. So fortunately, we exchanged numbers, brother. And you know what I'm saying? We also got the number of the elder that was pouring. So we'll see each other again at a lodge, you know what I mean? And I'll stay connected to the Red Road through that way, because just like you, man, I mean, the sweat lodge specifically, that's the ceremony that saved my life. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the one that truly basically changed my perspective. Because like in that first ceremony with Don Francisco in Santa Paula, seeing something to the end. You know what I'm saying? When we're in the streets, when we're hustling and we're doing our thing, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times, because we don't see things to the end. You know what I'm saying? Because we do what we can here. We got to be on to the next thing, the next grind. You know what I'm saying? And that's just the lifestyle that we have, very accelerated. And I remember one time an elder asked me, are you in a rush to get in a heart attack or something? You know what I'm saying? Slow down, brother. Actually enjoy life. And that's one of the things that the lodge teaches you. It teaches you to see it through the end. It teaches you that, like, for example, when the lodge gets hot, when life gets hot like that, you know what I'm saying? Accept. And you know what I'm saying? Through accepting, a lot of times you'll find your answers. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that I tell a lot of people, because that's what helped. So for example, my grandmother, may she rest in peace, she was a devoted, charismatic Christian, you know what I'm saying? Christian woman. And obviously for many years, she kind of resented that I wasn't following that tradition. But as I become Native, and as I got really deep in Native way, obviously I became a firekeeper and stuff like that. And and as I've been taught, these titles aren't that, they're responsibilities. They're not titles. You know what I'm saying? It's not a ranking or anything. No. It's just a responsibility and the work and the commitment that I have with fire. So through years of being a firekeeper and going to lodges, it changed me as a person. Kind of like one of my elders used to say, I'm more Christian now as a Native than I was when I actually went to church. You know what I'm saying? Because you learn to live a certain type of way. And so when I would come back and talk to my grandmother in her last few years, she saw obviously the change that I've had. You know what I'm saying? So she accepted me a lot more. And that's some of the beautiful stuff. So as we start to become that light that we talk about in ceremony, people tend to accept it. You know what I'm saying? Like many people in my family, not everybody, but a lot of people in my family, they now accept mi locura, you know what I'm saying? Because they see the change and they see that I've genuinely become a better person. And I owe that all to the lodge. And a lot of times, like I tell people, Moses, how did he find the 10 commandments? Speaking to fire. You know what I'm saying, and what are we doing when we go to a lodge? We're speaking to fire. You know what I mean? So it's all connected, and that's why it's beautiful that we say, and this is how I was taught by a Lakota brother about Mitaku Yasin, that we are all connected, and we're all connected these ways, and with everything. And obviously, if we're connected to the different faiths, the different traditions, the different paths of life, right? You know what I'm saying? And you find so many similarities. And like I said, when you break it down, it breaks down to love. You know what I'm saying? And the main teaching that we were taught in this last ceremony, to open up our hearts. So ultimately, if you get anything from this conversation, it's a reminder to open up your heart. You know what I mean? And that's really what it's all about. So that's how the work is going to continue. I'm going to continue going to ceremony, continue learning from my elders, but I'm going to continue to work also learning the language. And obviously any support that I could give out when I go to El Salvador or Cuscatlan, I'm going to do that, be it the library, be it with La Alcaldía del Común. I even ran a lodge back on November 25th, 2019, which is also the same day my grandmother, she passed.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. When I concluded with that ceremony, I was able to spend her last moments alive with her, that I had that blessing. And because of the lodge, I was obviously, you know what I'm saying, in a good space where I could connect with her that last time. So I'm very grateful, you know what I'm saying? And how did I spend my last moments with her? I was reading her favorite prayers, you know what I'm saying? Like de la Virgen de la Fátima, you know what I'm saying? El Padre Nuestro, and you know what I'm saying? Her favorite prayers. So I was able to say that, and with love, with compassion, you know what I'm saying? Not with that anger that I used to have. No, hombre, los asesinos, colonizers, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, man. So brother, trust me, we've all been there. We've all been there with that anger, with that frustration. But fortunately, that's the beautiful thing. We can. So that was one thing I remember. I was reminded that the natives, we kind of were the original Jesus Christ, because we took what colonizer brought to us, you know what I'm saying, and we converted it into love. You know what I'm saying? And that's how we've continued in our ways. So and that's the similarities, man. You'll always find a lot of similarities on the Red Road and Native Way with Christianity, with Buddhism, with any tradition, Muslim, any tradition that you find, you know what I'm saying? You'll find those similarities, because ultimately we're all connected.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was very beautiful. And
Right
no, man, very inspirational. I'm you know, it's a blessing, you know, for everyone that you're reaching, you know, doing the work that you're doing. And I'm glad, it's very inspirational to hear that that's, you know, the path you're walking. You know, I'm sure, you know, we probably won't, hopefully, you know, you do get to see it, but regardless, like you could tell, like, you know, every person you impact, it's going to send that ripple out through time. You know what I mean? So nothing is in vain, you know, so no, I'm really inspired. So thank you. Like really, for real. Like, I don't even have the words to say, you know, how grateful I am that you came on and that we're having this conversation, you know, so thank you for that. And
thank you, brother. And in Nahuatl Pipi, we would say payush.
Payush?
Payush or payush. You probably, like, the most common way is payush. That's the way that you would hear it. But in this class, I've actually learned that the elders, they prefer to say payush, and that means thank you.
Payush. Okay.
Payush,
oh, yeah, no, I gotta learn. I like, you know, see, you even inspire me to wanna, you know, there was a time where I was starting to learn, you know, more and more Nahuatl words, and then I just, you know, I stopped. And so even that, like, I was even learning Lakota, because, you know, they were teaching me when I was in Standing Rock. So then I even had an app on my phone, and I would be practicing and everything. And, you know, I stopped doing all that. And so, you know, yeah, I don't know, I'm inspired to want to pick that up again. So
do it, brother, do it. That would be awesome, man.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, no, so yeah, I mean, yeah, whenever you want to come on, we could you know, see what you got going on and everything. And like you said, I'm sure we'll see each other in the lodge and everything. And yeah, I don't know, unless there's anything else you want to add right now. I'm kind of like yeah, no, I'm inspired.
Brother, just thank you for the time, for the space, you know what I'm saying? Thank you for your life, brother, you know what I'm saying? Your prayer, and obviously how you're walking, brother, you know what I'm saying? Nothing but respect for that, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
brother.
No, thank you. No, and it's a good reminder of like that, you know, like to respect everybody. I guess if there's anything, like, I guess I always want to drive that point that I know I have that problem. See, like, I'll and it's a good reminder to don't act from the ego, right? To you know, it is what it is. Like we've taken it for, not that we have to take it. Right? See, or that's a problem in my mind. It'll be like, well, we already took it for 500 years, so you know,
Yeah.
I don't want to take it no more. But you know, I guess I mean, obviously we can take it if we need to, but you know, I want people to respect. I think it's time. It's time for people to open up their eyes, open up their hearts, especially, and realize that when they tell us these things, it's hurtful, you know, to not respect, or you know, it's like, that's it, respect. Like that, like how you said, there's always teachings that integrate. It's like well, I don't think that's in the Bible, because they always say what is it, respeta y te respetarán or something, but I don't really think that's from the Bible. I think that's just a saying that people say, you know, or stuff like that. But yeah, just show or do to others as you would want done to you, right? Like, yeah, I think that's in the Bible, right? So yeah, it's that simple. It's that simple, really. So, you know, but yeah, no, thank you once again. You know, it was an honor having you as a guest, and hopefully we can do this again. And yeah, I guess if anyone wants to get a hold of you, you know, I know I'm gonna send this to like my Salvadorian friends as well, like you know, because I think no, this was a beautiful conversation. So thank you. So anyone that wants to get a hold of you and see how they can also help out, you know what I mean? Like I know I have a lot of friends that go visit El Salvador and all that. They're always saying, oh yeah, I went to El Salvador or this and that, and who knows, maybe they want to get involved in all that. So, and anybody else really, you know, anybody that wants to get involved, I think you know, it's a beautiful thing. So you know, I'll definitely put them in contact with you if they contact me. So yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so how'd you say Payush or
Payush, and then Shipanu Iek Tayua Taek Tenewalis. O sea, pase buenas noches, bendiciones, or have a good evening, blessings, brother. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, likewise. Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you to teach me that one. But
for sure.
Yeah, but no, definitely, likewise. Thank you.
Thanks, fam.
All right, you have a good night too.
All right, right on.
Okay, all right. Peace.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I want to feel this way forever.